Now, Jens, I will start with you. We don't have that many government representatives in the room or at the festival. And I invite you to talk about the role government can play in this transition, but against the background that quite a few people, maybe even here in the audience, ask themselves, what can the government actually do for me? What can it do for innovation and business? It's the government, after all. Some might have already given up on politics because it's not delivering. Yes. So, hopefully you can tell us a more positive story. So I invite you to share your thoughts on how the state and the private sector can collaborate to make the energy transition a success, how the government of Hesse is already pursuing this objective with some ambition, and maybe also how this goes together, like how what you do goes together with what the federal government has on offer. Over to you.
Yeah, a lot of big questions. Thank you very much. I will try to answer them all in once and to keep it short and simple, by the way. I want to start with some thoughts that you started with in the beginning of the panel. And I think modernization and decarbonization, they are a really good story, and we need good solutions showing that it works. I think this is what it's all about, to convince the people to work together with us on this. And I, for myself, like very much doing this job and working on this. This is what I do every day in my job in the government, in the Hessen Ministry of Umwelt, Wirtschaft, Energieverkehr und Wohnen. And there's a lot to be done. We have a lot of work to be done if we want to reach our goals on CO2 reduction. We are discussing a lot of plans, and we have a lot of targets. And what I think is very important is to come really into action, to make some things happen. Because when we look on the sectors, we see we are too slow and we want to get faster. And this is what we are working on in the government. And we are working on this in Hessen for several years now. And we made some steps forward. If we look at our green energy production, half of the energy that we are producing in Hessen is renewable nowadays. And we are getting faster in building windmills for renewable energy. This is what we're working, for example, on. We have, since the beginning of this year, the obligation for the municipalities to make urban heat plans, for example, to get more renewable energy into building heating, or working hard on a better infrastructure for the power grids, for electric power grids, for example. There's happening a lot. We need better public transport, for example. We are investing a lot of money there to have a better infrastructure. Therefore, to give an opportunity to be mobile without a car, and have better opportunities to go by bike or by feet. This is what we are working hard on. But we can't do it alone in Hessen. We need better conditions, framework conditions. There's happening a lot if we look to Berlin and what they are doing there, for example, but it's still a long way to go. And we need to convince the people and the corporates that every step in this direction, working on this transition, makes sense in an economical and ecological way. And therefore, we need good and clever solutions, and that's why we need innovations and startups to make this transformation work. And we have, for example, on the startups, we have good numbers in Hessen. The numbers are increasing of startups that are working on this, and we want to keep this going. And seeing all these people on the Impact Festival, for example, makes me optimistic that we are on the right way. Thank you.
Wonderful. And we will get back to you on how exactly you can support those startups. We've only just alluded to this, but we can do that.
Some more ideas on the list, yes.
Wonderful. We do have some startup entrepreneur among us. Carolina, why didn't you just start by telling us something about Guido Solar first before I ask you questions?
Sure, thank you. So by the name of the company, you can probably guess that what I'm doing. This was exactly what we were going for. We're focusing on solar, and the company started 2.5 years ago in Berlin, in Germany, and we were thinking of ways how to bring solar potentially to the cities and also to people that don't necessarily are fortunate enough to own their own household and put it on their rooftop, but rather maybe can actually put it in their apartment. So we were one of the first companies that actually brought out solar for balconies, and it looks like a privacy screen, or in German it's Sichtschutz. And you would put that on your balcony and simply plug into a normal power socket, and that gives you the benefit of actually lowering your energy bill, but at the same time giving quite a nice impact on our planet by lowering the CO2. And this is one of the things that in my head has never been clear, like, okay, we have all these certificates that people and companies are buying, to offset the CO2, but they're buying them somewhere up north in the Nordics, in the large forests. What are we doing in the cities to actually offset the CO2? Kind of nothing, right? So only the rooftop solar, again, not really in the cities because it's outside of the cities, on the outskirts. And it felt like a good solution to actually bring more solar and more renewable energy to our homes. And right now I see that there is a lot of other solutions that are actually coming in where, you can install a heat pump also potentially in an apartment, and you can, install so many different cool technologies that can help you really lower your energy bills. And especially thank you for touching with the war in Ukraine. I'm originally from Ukraine. This is my Ukrainian flag with me. And especially when the war started, for me, it was clear that we need to be so independent. We really simply cannot rely on any other country. We have to be independent ourselves, not just Germany, but each state, each country by itself. And trying to understand how we can actually make it happen, because all this fantastic energy is out there, but we're not using it for some reason.
That's a good point. I want to ask a follow-up question. How can we make that happen? What is it that startups like yours need from governments? I mean, I hope it's breakthrough new regulation coming out of the German Bundestag this week to make your technology actually easier to implement. But what is it that you could really benefit from?
So already came out yesterday that, for example, the solar power plants will not need any specific permission. And we have been lobbying for that for 2 years straight to make sure that that happens. When we came out with the whole set and with the technology, the regulation simply was not there. When we were going also to investors, they were telling us, but we don't know how that's going to actually plan out and whether this market will ever exist. And I was like, well, but people need to switch to renewable energy and it's going to happen. So there has been definitely a lot of pushback, but we need grants, and grants that don't take 1 year or more to potentially get, but actually are fast in getting, because we don't really simply have the time to kind of waste, right? If we're there and we have the technology and we have the potential to implement it, it needs to be fast. And definitely regulation, right? So regulation in terms of making it easier, making it more accessible. A lot of the education that is not made. People don't simply realize that this is possible. They don't really trust that this is possible. I think if the governments are talking more about it and making it very clear that it's possible and people shouldn't be scared of implementing something like this in their homes, it will be more of a norm.
So there needs to be much more communication.
Way more.
The government, from politics to people implementing these solutions.
Yep.
Now, Johannes, you kind of sit in between all these different spheres, high-tech, Gründerfonds. I think everyone in the room could really benefit if you told us a little bit about what the high-tech Gründerfonds is, what you do, how you choose startups for investment, etc., etc.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me. So HTGF, we are one of the largest early stage venture capital funds in Germany, investing in pre-seed and seed stage. So very early, often when there's only a team, a pitch deck, a promising market. And what makes us special, HTGF is about 18 years old. We have done about 700 investments so far, so quite a lot. And I can tell you we made a lot of learnings, bad ones, good ones, and we try to support our founders with those learnings. And what makes us also special, we have about 70 corporates, mainly from Germany, some very large ones, that is SAP and Bosch, but also a lot of SMEs as our fund investors. And in almost all cases, we are able to match our startups in our portfolio with those fund investors and initiate a fruitful exchange, being it a customer relationship, an R&D partnership, whatever. And HTGF is we often say in our industry, a generalist fund. So we invest in almost all markets and technologies. However, we have always invested a lot in energy and climate tech, about 60 investments in the 18 years history, so quite some experience. And some of you probably heard Next Kraftwerke, which is a marketeer for renewables, which we sold to Shell about 2 years. Another example, Envelio, a smart grid company, which we sold to E.ON last year. And we really want to pursue investing in energy and climate tech because we think there are a lot of opportunities, and we came up with, I would say, 2 investment theses in groups of startups we want to invest. One is everything related to flexibility, storage, and services that bring supply and demand of electricity into balance at all times. I think there are a lot of opportunities. So there's one group, often software related, and we also see a lot of opportunities hardware related, especially in breakthrough technologies. So when it comes to e-fuels for aviation or shipping, when it comes to fusion, for example, when it comes to new materials for electrolyzers, I think there are, in the hardware space, also a lot of opportunities where we want to get in contact if you are in those fields. And once more, I would like to encourage everyone to pursue founding a startup in that field. And
Great pitch. One thing I want to understand now, there was government ambition behind the whole founding story of the High-Tech Gründerfonds. But if you look at the funding landscape, how do you feel government promotional programs, government support programs are playing together with your world?
So I think in the last years, a lot of new funds have been raised. And I think in certain areas, when it comes to software, when it comes to early stages, there is already a lot of capital. But there are still areas where there's not enough private capital and we need government support. This is particularly true in R&D heavy companies. This is in particular true for hardware, and also for later stages where both private capital is missing and the large grant programs which are providing capital for large investments in capex heavy startups.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Again, everyone in the audience is invited to raise their voice. Maybe you've got a question, a comment. Please feel invited. Karina, I want to ask you, you've got some experiences with fundraising. You've probably applied for a few programs, you made your pitches. Which country do you feel is the most supportive, or where is it the easiest to fundraise?
Europe is not easy to fundraise. Okay. Let's just be clear on that. No, I think if you have a software technology, it is easy to fundraise, or let's say easier, right? I'm not saying that it comes easy to any founder. It is easier to fundraise if you have software. If you have hardware technologies, everybody usually shies away. So this is much, much harder, unfortunately, to fundraise. We definitely have taken some time. It probably took us about a year to raise our seed round. And at the end, we did not raise in Europe. So I would love to say that, our first angels that came on board, most were German, absolutely fantastic people from energy sector, from governmental, let's say, different governmental structures, also from background in the e-commerce, to help us kind of like understand how to actually distribute the product better. So angels, a lot of them were German. Yes, we have some European ones from like Spain and the UK and so on. Seed round, not in Europe.
Is there anyone else in the room who shares this experience or this perspective, this opinion? Okay, so we're telling people something new. That's quite hurrying as well.
Yeah. So for hardware, it's simply quite a tough task, I would say, because everyone is not really sure how the whole system or like technology that you're creating is going to pan out. Is it going to be adoptable? So everybody is kind of careful and wants to wait whether it's going to work. And when it works, it's kind of already too late because you kind of needed the money to survive in order to actually implement the technology. So all of these great startups, unfortunately, that need the money to prove that something is going to work, they kind of lose out on the investors that are here. And there is tons of money in Europe, especially in Germany, but a lot of it is kind of held back because of being quite afraid of investing into hardware.
Different mindset, but we're all here to change that, of course.
I would love to.
So,
I would love
to. With Jens, we've got a person who can change things, right? I mean, you're at least co-responsible for what the state of Hesse does to support startups. So against the background of what you heard, what is it that you can do, or what is it that you think should be done?
Yeah, for the state of Hessen, it's very important to improve the setting for startups in Hessen. And we already did a lot of things in this area. And I think it's very important, just to be in contact and hear what your problems are to get even better. There are, I think, different important parts of it, like communication, networking, bringing people together is one part where we have a lot of things organized, like the Houses of Strategy in Hessen, the House of Energy, the House of Logistics and Mobility, where we have startup events, for example, and in Hessen we will start a big project, the Green Energy Hub, to help startups in north of Hessen. It's called Genesis in the beginning to build it up. And this is where we start tomorrow, for example. In the House of Logistics and Mobility, they do a lot for startups. And we are working on the funding things to just close those gaps, like you mentioned, yes? And we have different offers for different situations in what time it is needed for the startups, like the push grant, for example, or our future funds we have together in public-private partnerships. They're called Venture and Regio Growth, and these are the ways we try to help startups to grow, to be successful. These are some examples, and I think it's. And we have to take every opportunity to talk to each other and see what is the next step to be done to even get better.
Totally.
That's why I'm here.
I think more grants, more support in terms of funding, it definitely helps, right? So especially on the stages where you understand, okay, we would love to have more factories in Europe. We would love to have more of this manufacturing of this industry in Europe. but this requires quite a bit of investment. This requires quite a lot of support, not just from investors, but also governmental, grants that can actually support such a big machine.
And the question is obviously how much of that public money that will be made available, for instance, for reshoring the solar value chain in Europe, how much of those government funds will go towards young companies, towards startups? Coming back to what you do in Hessen, how important is this green tech, climate tech, energy transition sector for you in your programs? Are you prioritizing the industries that you support? How important is green energy, climate tech for your programs?
I think it's part of our legislation that we have to support and do the funding exactly there in the area of renewable energy, for example, and all our funding is on that goals and targets. Yeah, that's and we are using federal money for that, European money. We give Hessen fundings to push this forward and getting forward in these areas like renewable energies, for example. Innovative ideas are very important for us, like fintechs that are working on sustainable solutions. This is where a lot of our funding goes.
Now, this is a very entrepreneurial approach. You want to see a certain kind of business being successful, also taking root in the state of Hessen. You've got political objectives in terms of decarbonization, and that's what you do to support the energy transition. Is this
right?
Correct summary?
Yeah, surely.
Huh?
Yeah, we want to be, this is what we have in our law, that to be CO2 neutral in 2045. And so we have to put all our power there and what we can.
And coming back to the high-tech Gründerfonds, how political can you be in your choice of projects?
Yeah, maybe to add on that, I'm not even sure if it's it needs a special mandate for public funds to invest more in energy and climate tech, because when we look at our deal flow, we see about 2,000 new startups every year. And when we look at the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, we saw a very large increase of startups in that field, in energy and climate tech. And that naturally increases the investments, at least we, but I'm sure also other grant programs, but also other funds are therefore investing more and more in these very important fields.
And it's
Yeah, and what I mentioned, this push grant, for example, this is exactly just orientated on startups that are working on sustainable goals and on the ESG goals. It's right focus there.
And Johannes, is there anything that you would kind of recommend, based on your experience, what could be improved in terms of what the government does to support successful startups?
Maybe first of all, not make it more difficult for startups to compete. I mean, we talk about the energy space, and obviously it's a space that is highly regulated, and more regulation often benefits to a certain extent, or is easier to cope with for large companies, and more difficult for startups, of course. And I was talking to a startup here at the booth yesterday. They are developing and producing sustainable packaging material for as a plastic alternative, and they are very cautious about the currently discussed industry electricity price, because that will benefit larger companies and make their costs lower. And they have a very great material with a lot of sustainability properties where they are stronger compared to conventional plastics, but they still have a higher premium price. And they are on a good way to decrease that cost and price with a larger production facility in the next years. But if a industry electricity price makes it the conventional plastic cheaper, then obviously it will take longer to be price competitive and to really roll out for the startup. I'm not in general against these policies, but I think it's important to take the startups and the smaller companies into those policies into account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think tax breaks, I mean, the first few years, if we have a tax break, that would help tremendously. When you're like a young startup, this really helps. I'm super happy about the fact that all solar products are now VAT free in Germany. Also, Netherlands has followed, and I'm sure that other countries will follow as well, which is fantastic. But I think like at early stages, I don't know, first 3 years, first 5 years, if you have a tax break, at least this is great, because the amount of money that we have hanging, in the Finanzamt is like crazy. Yeah.
Just to bring you in, how many of you think that these are good ideas, like taking more care that smaller companies can be brought in, actually benefit from this transition, tax breaks for startups? You think it's a good idea? You've got more ideas that you want to share? Not today. Jens, how realistic is all of this? Tax breaks, for instance, or in legislation, making sure that small startups are actually able to compete. How realistic is it, given your experience in policy making?
I think it's realistic because as we see now, when we look at the economical situation in Germany, we have problems, and the federal state is working on making it more easy to make good business in Germany with new laws in the next weeks and months, and taxes always play a role in this case. So I think it's very important what's happening in the federal state on taxes. Yes, but I think it's possible. So we need it, and we have to support the startups, and so I think it's possible. And for example, one more thing I want to talk about at this point is that we brought with StartHub 20 startups here on the Impact Festival. So this is one other example for how we try to help the startups and to meet people here that can help with funding and all that's needed.
I guess it's the perfect note to end this panel discussion on. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your thoughts, including about the future. So much more is possible, but it takes us showing up, it takes our engagement, it takes us maybe speaking up on one occasion or the other. So I hope you do lots of this at the Impact Festival Beyond, and thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, especially to the three of you.
Thank you.